All right, let's take a look at nested ifs, and we're going to look at the logical operators and, or, and not. So with nested ifs, I can put an if statement inside of another if statement to check multiple things. In this case, I want to check to see if num is greater than 2 and if it's less than 10. If it's not greater than 2, I just want to go to the else and print out that it's less than 2. So in this case, num is 1, 1's not greater than 2, jumps to the else, prints out less than 2. Assume, though, that num was 5. If num was 5, the num greater than 2 condition would be true. Then it would go on inside that block of code attached to that if and then evaluate whether num was less than 10. If it was 5, it'd be less than 10. It'd print out greater than 2 and less than 10. We'll look at this one a little more closely when we get to the code here in just a second. This one, similar to the prior one, except I've added some print lines in and mixed those around so you get a little better idea of what's happening and how it's moving through the code. Here I've got P is 74. 74 is greater than 30, so it goes into the block of code attached to the if, prints out A+, then it checks to see if P's value of 74 is bigger than 40. It is, so it also prints out comp. Does not go to the else because the if statement condition was true. Say that P was 24, it would jump down to the else and print out psi. And we're going to look at this in some code in just a second. Logical operators. You've got or, and not. With or, either one of the pieces attached to the or part of the condition, if either one is true, it's true. So in this case, I'm checking to see if 1's greater than 3, that can make it true, or if 2 is greater than 200. Our code that we have here, 1 is equal to 6, 6 is greater than 3, that's true, it's going to print out A+. If 6 was 2, 2 is not greater than 3, then it would go and check the condition to see if 2 was greater than 200, and as 2 is 150, that would also fail. And so it would not print A+ in that case. And we're gonna check this out in just a few minutes when we get to the code. So with an or, either one can be true. With the and, they both have to be true. So if my if condition failed and it went to the else if, then 1 would have to be less than and equal to 6, and 2 would have to be less than 200. Okay, and so we'll play with this code in just a second to make sure that you're totally on board with what's going on here. And here I just changed my values around just a little bit. I've got 1 set to 6. 6 is not greater than 6, so that fails. So it checks the other side of the or. 2 is 150. 150 is not greater than 200. That fails. So now it goes to the else if, checks the and. 1, which is 6, is less than or equal to 6. And 2, which is 150, is less than 200. So this one would print out comp sci. So let's go take a look at this in the code so you get a better idea of what we're doing. Let's work through some code so we can see all the different aspects of nested if statements and your logical operators all at work. I'm going to try to put in enough scenarios here that we can, trip each part of the code to make sure that you totally understand exactly what happens when you run different values through it. So on this first one, we have nested if statements. So I've got P's greater than 30. Inside of that, I got P's greater than 40. If the P's greater than 30 fails, it jumps to the else. So let's run this through with P's value of 24. So we run it through as 24. 24 is not bigger than 30, so it does not enter into the block of code attached to the if. Immediately jumps to the else and prints out psi. So now let's change to 34. We're gonna put in every possible combination to trigger all this. So P's 34. 34 is greater than 30. It goes into the code attached to the if, prints out A+, checks to see if P is greater than 40. It's not, so it doesn't print comp. Because the if was true, it doesn't go to the else. Let's change it now to 44 and run it through one more time. This should be the other scenario. Now we check 44. 44 is bigger than 30, prints A+. 44 is also bigger than 40, prints out comp. That would be the other scenario. So once you're going through these examples, you need to do what I'm doing and change them up a whole bunch, add in some different values, test all the scenarios, make sure that you totally got it. Now this one, we're going to try to put in every combination possible. This one gets a little weird because of all the different scenarios, but I've got 1 set to 75 and I've got 2 set to 250. So let's run this thing through with this initial setup and let's see what we get. So the first time through we get A+, prints out A+ because 1's value of 75 is bigger than 6. So let's change 1 to 5. Remember with an or, either condition or any of the conditions connected with the or has to be true in order for it to execute what's attached to that if. So let's run this through one more time. Now I'm still getting A+. 5 is not greater than 6. That fails. So OR checks the other condition. 2's greater than 200 because 2's value is 250, so it executes A plus. So let's change 2 to 150. Now we're going to run it through one more time. And now we get nothing. And we get nothing because 1's value is 5. 5 is not less than or equal to 0. 2 is less than 200, but with an AND, all of the conditions connected with ANDs have to be true. In this case, I only have 2 conditions, but both of them would have to be true in order for it to execute. So fails on both checks for the OR with A plus, and fails on the first check with the AND on comp sci. So let's go up here and let's change 1 to -5. So now -5 is less than or equal to 0, and 2's value of 150 is also less than 200. Okay, so now it prints out comp sci. So later on, we're going to look at this in an even more sophisticated way where we break down the ANDs and ORs and we connect ANDs and ORs all together and make some different Boolean expressions.